Holiday classics, mashed potatoes, stuffing, gravy, cranberry sauce, you know the drill. But when everyone's already covering the basics, why not shake things up? Today I'm gonna show you some healthy, easy to make side dishes that will stand out and make sure you're not in the kitchen all day. So let's make this holiday delicious and stress-free. Now before we get into this video, I do wanna share that if you are looking for those classics, I do have a full video with all of those Thanksgiving sides. I'll link it here as well as in the description box. Just in case that's what you're looking for, you can go watch it after this one. But today we're focusing on some alternative ideas. So let's go ahead and get started with the two that are going into the oven first: crispy potatoes and roasted veggies. Now I love mashed potatoes, but this recipe is one that I have actually been dying to try because oil-free crispy potatoes can be really difficult to achieve, and these look delicious. So I'm going to use these small potatoes today because they are just much easier to deal with. You don't have to peel them. You can just cut them in half instead of cutting them into cubes. So let's go ahead and rinse them and get them prepped. Now we want to parboil these first before roasting, and this is actually a trick that I have seen with other crispy roasted potatoes. So already I'm feeling good about this recipe. Let's go ahead and get our potatoes covered with water and we'll just bring this up to a boil. I'm also going to preheat the oven now and get our veggies ready to roast. Now for roasting, you can use any veggies you like here. I'm just using what's in season. So we have some sweet potatoes, Brussels sprouts, acorn squash, carrots, red onion, and of course some herbs. And you can actually eat the skin of both sweet potatoes and acorn squash. So if you don't want to deal with peeling, you can just wash them, well, scrub them thoroughly, and then cut them up and roast them as is. The Brussels, I am gonna take off the outer layer first just because mine look a little bit dirty, but we're just gonna take off one layer and then slice them in half. And I just love Brussels sprouts. They're like little mini cabbages. Look how cute they are. Meanwhile, our potatoes have been boiling for about 5 minutes already, and so I'm just gonna check them. We want them to be a little bit soft, but still relatively firm. They definitely shouldn't be all the way boiled and falling apart. So these look perfect. I'm going to drain them, and they can actually just sit there and steam dry a little bit, and that way we can finish up our roasted veggies and get those into the oven first. For the seasoning on these veggies, we're gonna use a secret ingredient. Instead of oil, we're actually going to use maple syrup, but they aren't gonna be sweet because we're also gonna add thyme, rosemary, some garlic powder, and of course salt and pepper. So let's just toss these in our seasoning and get them into the oven. And so now we just need to get our potatoes seasoned. I mean, not really seasoned, but coated, I guess. And we only need 2 ingredients for that. We need aquafaba and semolina. So aquafaba is just bean water. That's why I have a can of chickpeas. You could also use homemade chickpeas and just the liquid that's left over after cooking them. That's aquafaba. And I guess it doesn't have to be chickpeas either. Chickpeas is just the most common bean to get the aquafaba from, but really any bean water will work. So we're gonna drain off the liquid from these chickpeas and use that aquafaba. And then of course also save your chickpeas, don't throw them out. You can pop them into the freezer. I like to freeze them in little silicone molds, and that way you have little tiny portions ready to pop out whenever you need them. You can just microwave them, add them to a salad, to a soup, whatever you want. And then the other ingredient for our potatoes is gonna be semolina, or you can also use cornmeal. Now, I almost skipped over this recipe entirely when I saw this as an ingredient because it's just not something that I use often, but it was actually only a couple dollars at the grocery store, and I think cornmeal is similar, so not too expensive, and if it helps to get a crispy exterior on our potatoes without oil, then it's worth it. So I'm trying this for you guys today. Let's hope it goes well. So we're just gonna toss our potatoes with the aquafaba and semolina. and shake the pot vigorously. This is to rough up the edges of the potatoes so that it creates a more textured exterior, and that is what's gonna get those edges extra crispy in the oven. And then we'll just spread those out onto a baking sheet, add our salt, and pop them into the oven. I'm moving them to the top rack, and since our other veggies have been roasting for 20 minutes already, we're gonna go ahead and add the garlic and red onion, as well as some pecans, and then we will pop this back in the oven as well, and those veggies get another 20 minutes, and the crispy potatoes will need 25 minutes. So while all of those are roasting, let's go ahead and start on our next dish, which is going to be a butternut squash soup. This, I feel, is a perfect side dish to bring if you're going somewhere, because not a lot of people have butternut squash on their Thanksgiving table, but everybody loves it. Okay, maybe not everyone, but almost everyone. I just feel like it is the forgotten recipe that everybody just devours when they have it on their table. Now to start, of course, we have our butternut squash, and I actually read a tip from one of you guys in the comments that said to make it easier to peel and cut your squash, you should microwave it first. So I'm gonna microwave it for 2 minutes, and that should make it a lot easier to peel and cut. And then of course, we're also gonna dice up some onion and some garlic. And then we're just gonna add a little bit of fresh herbs. We have some sage, rosemary, and ginger. And then for veggie broth, I am using the Better Than Bouillon broth paste. So all you need to do for that is just to add water and then a scoop of your broth paste. This is like a concentrated form of broth. So you just add a little bit to water and that turns into broth instead of buying those cartons of veggie broth. But of course, regular veggie broth will work here, or a stock cube of bouillon, whatever you've got. And now with our soup cooking, let's go ahead and get our final 2 dishes ready. First, if you know me, you know I am a salad lover, and almost every party or get together I go to, I am the one who brings the salad. Salad is also like butternut squash soup. Nobody thinks to make one for their Thanksgiving table, but when they have it as an option, it always gets eaten, especially if you have a good dressing. So let's start off by chopping all of our veggies, and I'm just doing kind of a classic green salad here, but we're gonna add a little bit of fall flair into it to make it a little more Thanksgiving-y. And my secret ingredients to make this a little bit more of a fall-inspired salad are to use apple, dried cranberries, and pecans. These 3 are going to take our boring green salad and make it a lot more fun and delicious. But if you don't like fruit in your salad, I suggest you can do maybe 2 kinds of nuts. You could do the pecans and also some pumpkin seeds. That would be a nice addition as well. And I like to use roasted pecans, so I'm just going to roast mine in my toaster oven. I think it just gives a little bit nicer flavor. And same with if you were to use pumpkin seeds, I would probably buy maybe toasted and salted ones just for this salad. Vegan feta, totally up to you as well. I really like this Dea brand. I've actually taken this to Omni eaters before and they couldn't even tell it was vegan cheese. Also, because you're not really using a lot of it here, it just adds a nice little extra bit of flavor, but it is totally optional. And then I always like to use a nice big salad bowl. I just find it really helps with the presentation. And then we are just gonna whisk up some dressing. Now, my tip for dressing, if you are trying to eat a little bit healthier and watch your calorie intake, is to use less oil. Now, to get a large volume of salad dressing, we are going to use veggie broth instead, and just a little bit of oil for that kind of creamy mouthfeel. But the bulk is going to be veggie broth, so you're saving on a lot of calories, but still getting flavor. And I always recommend to dress your salad just right before you eat it. Now that this squash is nice and cooked down, we are just gonna add a little bit of black pepper and some cashew cream, which is just raw cashews blended with water. You could also sub coconut cream if you prefer. And then we're gonna use either an immersion blender or a regular blender and blend this until it's nice and smooth. And then just plate it up with a little bit of decoration. And lastly, I wanted to do some kind of a dessert or sweet treat that would be fun to share at a holiday gathering. Now, of course, there are the classics like pumpkin pie and pecan pie, which I also have a video for, but I wanted something a little bit easier and that's also really easy to share. So these little date bites are perfect because you can just set them out on a nice serving platter and they could be shared with a group. If there are any leftovers, they're really easy to store, and they are going to be a pretty healthy option because the main ingredient is going to be dates. Now, I like to use medjool dates for this because I find them to be more plump and juicy. So these I actually found in the produce aisle of my grocery store, not the dried fruit and nut section, because these are actually considered a fresh fruit. So look for them there and see if you can get the fresh ones instead of dried ones. Now these do make a good dessert just on their own, but we are gonna dress them up a little bit and add some tahini and walnuts and then cover them in chocolate, and that will just make them a little bit extra special. So let's start by taking out all of the pits from our dates, and you don't wanna break them in half entirely because you want them to be able to close back up. So you're just kind of opening the top, kind of like you would a baked potato. And then we're gonna fill these with tahini and some walnuts, and then just kind of pinch them shut again. Now I'm just gonna pop these into my freezer. My tahini is a little bit runny, so it will help to make them more solid pieces once they have been frozen, and it'll also be easier to cover them in chocolate that way. So just about 15 or 20 minutes in the freezer should be good. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and get our chocolate melted. I'm using a combination of vegan chocolate chips and dark chocolate. You can totally just use one or the other, but I find that the vegan dark chocolate is a little bit too bitter and the chocolate chips are a little bit too sweet. So mixing them together gives a nice balance, but really it's not necessary. I just also happen to have both of them on hand. So that's what we're going with. So we just heat this bowl in the microwave in 30-second intervals, and that's to make sure the chocolate does not burn. And then just stir in between each time you heat it. And then I'm going to add just a tiny bit of refined coconut oil here. The refined coconut oil has no flavor. It won't have any coconut flavor. And this is optional, but I just find that it really helps to thin out the chocolate. So just plain melted chocolate is a little bit thick and a little bit more difficult to work with. Once you add a tiny bit of coconut oil, it just makes it thinner and runnier, and it also sets with like a really hard shell. And then we'll just roll our dates in the chocolate and let them set. You can pop them back into the fridge once they are all covered to get that chocolate hard again. Now, I would suggest to keep these dessert dates refrigerated until just before serving, if possible. I have noticed that with this chocolate, since it's been melted, it can melt again at room temperature or like really warm temperatures. So if it is possible, I recommend to keep them chilled and then just take them out maybe 30 minutes before serving. So now our roasted potatoes and veggies are done. I have to try a crispy potato just to see if they turned out well. Ooh, yes, look at that crispiness. So delicious, light and fluffy on the inside and really crispy on the outside. These are really good. So let's get these potatoes and roasted veggies plated as well. I'm just adding a little bit of chives, vegan feta, and some rosemary for decoration. I hope you guys give at least one of these recipes a try for your Thanksgiving table. And since I know some of you will still be looking for those classic side dishes, I will leave that video right here. You can watch that one after this.